Hi folks, my name is Adam and I like to make tiny nerdy things, and I grew up watching Sesame Street. In fact, it's probably how I learned to do a speaking so good. But while watching, I always wished I could hop into my TV and join the crew as they went about their daily business, which got me thinking, what would it be like if they could climb out of the TV to join us? Of course, as soon as I had that thought, I remembered that girl from The Ring who climbs out of your TV and murders you a little bit, and well, one thing led to another, and well, I mean, you know what I do here, so what do you expect? So all that to say that what started out innocently enough turned into me making Elmo climbing out of a TV with possibly ill intentions. I don't know, I leave it up to you, the viewer, to draw your own conclusion. At this point, I've made a temporary floor and wall and sketched a TV onto it so that I can start to build Elmo's body in an appropriately TV traversing pose. And once I've got said pose sorted out, I can get to work turning this gray clay blob into an adorable red Muppet, starting with his head. As far as sculpting is concerned, I love the Muppets because they're immediately recognizable despite almost no discerning features. After all, Elmo's really just a lump of red fur with a couple eyeballs and a nose, and everyone in the world can identify him immediately. I suppose I am setting myself up for potential failure here by saying he's super easy to sculpt, since if it turns out like utter trash, then I don't really have any good excuses to fall back on, but fortunately, half-baked sculptures that only vaguely look like what they're supposed to has kind of become my de facto style, so I should be safe. Otherwise, once I've built up Elmo's body and attached 2 arms and a leg, then mounted it on my wall so I can figure out how to position his limbs, I can start to cover them up in a thick layer of clay. I decided to go with the 2/3 out of the TV pose so I can have one hand on the floor supporting his weight while the other hand is reaching towards his unfortunate victim. Speaking of which, once the bodybuilding is done, it's time to make those hands. These start as little balls squished flat into which I can cut some little digits. Some pinching and pulling will shape said digits into fingers, and well, that's kinda it. These are then ready to be fit onto the forearm stumps, with the left hand splayed on the floor and the right hand reaching forwards. And his foot is an even simpler oblong blob stuck onto his leg. Finally, with the foot in place, it's on to the inferring process. Now, over the course of my 4-year tenure as a YouTube sculptor, I've tried a lot of different methods for making fur. Some have been good and some have been not good. Of course, I never remember how I did them, so every day is a new attempt. I could always go back and rewatch those videos, but I don't know, that feels weird. Like, do you think Taylor Swift ever listens to her own music? Not that I'm comparing myself to Taylor Swift, I just wanted to say her name a couple of times so I could put it in the tags and boost my SEO. However, with the fur finished, I can add the final finishing touches, which will turn this furry, faceless monster into an immediately recognizable, much-beloved character. And with that, Elmo's sculpting is done, so it's time to make a TV. I want to give my TV a backlight to provide some lighting to the scene, so I've got a little sheet of perspex to size, and to build the frame for the TV, I'm going to use this MDF sheet that is the exact same thickness. This isn't important at all, I just think it's a fun coincidence. I was originally going to go with an old school CRT TV that would give me lots of room to fit the lighting, but I thought it might look a little bit more interesting if Elmo was climbing out of a proper flat screen. So I've got a piece of MDF to size, drilled a couple holes for wiring, then attached a picture of Sesame Street that I found on the internets. I'll then remove the protective layer from the perspex and fit it on top. I also made the frame of the TV off screen by making a shallow box with a cutout that fits perfectly over the screen, and to add the lighting, I strung together 3 of these noodly LEDs to give me an extra long noodly light that will stretch all the way around the screen. Again, totally coincidentally, the lights are the exact same thickness as the perspex, so a little hot glue will keep them in place around the perimeter, and I can run the wiring through the back of the TV into those pre-drilled holes. Then the back can be press fit into place, and I can test the wiring to see how my TV looks. And it looks pretty good, but it's not quite what I was going for. While it is hella spooky looking, I kinda wish the lights were cool white instead of warm white, and while I don't have any cool white lights, maybe I can fake it. I removed the back and perspex, then using a transparent blue ink, I gave all the lights a light dusting of blue in the hopes that it would tone down the warmth of the yellow. It kinda did, and it looks way better on camera, but in person it was too dim and tinged a little too green, so I ended up wiping the blue off. Instead, I'm going to lean into the yellow, but try and diffuse it even more, which means frosting my perspex. A quick sanding on a high grit sandpaper will turn my glossy perspex frosted, and I'll cover the back of the TV in some shiny aluminium tape, which I'm hoping will help to reflect some of the light. I'll then attach another picture to the front of the perspex and put everything back together. The frosted glass will help to diffuse the light more evenly across the surface, lighting up even more of the picture, making it look a little less spooky, but a little bit more like an actual TV. A little gap filler will fill in the gaps around the edge of the TV where the light's bleeding through, and I can smooth it all out with a tiny bit of sandpaper ASMR. Finally, I can attach the TV to a little base. Of course, because I made Elmo reaching down with his left hand, I need to raise the TV up a tiny bit, so I made this little TV bench off camera. With that, the TV and accompanying bench are built and ready for some paint. I'll start by priming everything black. Once both the TV and the bases are black, I'll then base coat the base in brown, then add some variation by swiping a couple different shades across the surface, making it look like cheap, fake wooden MDF furniture, which is exactly what it is. As for the TV, it's just going to stay black, but I want it to be a glossy, plasticky black, so I'll blast it with a high gloss varnish. Otherwise, that's the furniture finished, so it's on to painting Elmo. And in a shocking twist to no one, Elmo gets an all-over base coat in red. I'll then follow this in a series of progressively lighter, progressively more aggressive reds applied everywhere until he's got a nice fluffy red body. His mouth gets a once-over in an ultra-flat black, and I can paint his eyes and nose white, which will make painting his nose yellowy orange a little easier. Finally, using an appropriately sized ball stylus, I can add his little black pupils. I can then finally begin assembling my pieces, starting by gluing the TV to the bench and attaching Elmo to the center of the TV. Now I found even with the gloss from the varnish, the screen's a bit flat, so I'm going to flood the surface with a thin layer of UV resin followed by some ripples where Elmo is climbing through. And while I've got the resin out, I may as well goop up his eyeballs. With that, I thought I was finished, but I realized that this little scene fits perfectly on my rotating base, so I decided to make a foam base the exact same size. This will also give me somewhere to hide the battery pack for the TV, so to lift the base up a bit, I'll wrap a strip of foam around the rim and glue it in place, adding support where needed. I can then fill in the gaps with more gap filler before carving some parallel lines across the top to create some wooden planks, which I'll then texturize using a stiff metal brush. One of my patrons said I should add a shag carpet, and that seemed like a great idea, so I'll mark out the curve of the floor on a thick sheet of cardstock, then cut it to size and paint the top with that nasty brown beige that all shag carpets seem to have. To make the shag carpet shaggy, I figured I could use some static grass, specifically this ugly beigey grass that perfectly matches the base tone I just painted. And to apply said static grass, I'll use my static grass applicator. I'll fill the top with a copious amount of grass, then coat the base in a thick layer of glue, then it's as simple as aggressively shaking the applicator until my arm hurts and I'm left with a truly beautiful shaggy shag carpet. Now admittedly, it kinda just looks like a patch of grass or fur, but while it's not good, it is good enough, so I can set this aside to dry while I get to work painting the floor. Now the floor is exceptionally simple, as I'll just give it a top coat of mahogany so that it looks like mahogany, then I'll paint the rim black. At this point the carpet is dry enough that I can then attach it to the base with a little hot glue, and I can fit Elmo and his TV in place at the edge of the carpet. All it's left to do then is make a couple odds and ends to finish this off. Originally, I'd envisioned having a couple of kids on a sofa screaming as Elmo's coming for them, but then I remembered that that would involve making a couple of kids in a sofa, and that's literally an entire video's worth of work by itself. Fortunately, another beautiful patron said I could probably just fake it if I had a couple bits and bobs strewn about in front of the TV to imply someone scrambled away just out of frame. So to that end, I made a teeny tiny can of cola that I'll have tipped over just at the edge of the carpet. Also, I'm going to be running the wiring through the base to the battery pack underneath, but instead of having it just awkwardly pass through the floor, I thought maybe I could make a little power strip so it looks like the TV is actually plugged in. I'll then paint the power strip a nice power strip white, and I'll give the can of cola a silver top and bottom, then paint the center red before adding a big white cola logo in the center, since this family is frugal and no name cola tastes the same. A dab of hot glue will hold my can in place, and I made a little TV remote to lay beside it. Finally, I can use this AK interactive puddle goo to create my spilled cola. This stuff will dry hard and glossy like resin, but I don't need to actually mix up the resin, and it's already tinted a nice cola color. Finally, I'll drill a little hole in the back of the base for the TV cable, then run the cable through my power strip and secure the strip in place. To hide the hole and cover the cable, I made a little black plug to fit over the top. Last but not least, I can attach my TV wires to a battery box and glue it to the underside of the base. And with that, we're all done here and onto the Glamour Shots. As always, a big old thank you to the fine folk over on Patreon, and a special hey how are ya to the newest of them: Darken Tides, Ebba DeFelston, Jonathan Wiesner, Dan and Saf for Life, River Stevens, Asriel, Electric Banana Rat, Everett James, Saturn's Rings, Magic Mango 99, Elysia Fields, Nicolaus Thomas, Meg Graham, and Half-Imp. You are the no-name brand flat screen TV through which this fluffy red muppet of a channel escapes. If you like this video, then share it with every single person you've ever met. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Cheers.